Hi guys, and welcome to this video for Year 12 Business Management. This video is on Unit 3 Outcome 3, which is all about operations management. This video, we are on the 5th key knowledge point, and we are going to focus on the strategies related to materials management that theoretically should improve both the efficiency and effectiveness of operations. So we're in the strategies of how we improve our operations, and we're going to focus on materials. If we look at our specific key knowledge point from our study design, we are going to focus on how these strategies will improve the efficiency and effectiveness. And we've talked about the difference of those in a few videos in related to materials. And in particular, we're going to think about 4 strategies: forecasting, master production schedule, and materials requirement planning, which are quite linked, and then something called just-in-time management. So what do we mean by materials management? We are talking about inventory management, the management of our inputs, and these are the strategies that manage the use, storage, handling, and delivery of materials. This is because we want to ensure that there is the right amount of inputs available when they are needed. So for those of us that do accounting or just heard this term before, we are talking really about the management of our inventory. And our inventory is the materials that and ultimately the end goods and services that we have that we're going to sell. Now, the effective management of these materials is very important to the success of our operations. You might intuitively go, well, the obvious strategy is to make sure we always have enough of these materials, so we should store them so when we need them. But however, there is a big issue if we have too much inventory. That means too much money or capital is going to be tied up in looking after this inventory, these materials, when it could be used for other areas, like expanding the business. Money including by spending money on the warehouses and the people to look after them. Also, having excess inventory or excess stock could increase our waste. It can go off if it's perishable or just might become unpopular and we have to sell it for less. And just even if we don't waste it, there is just going to be significant increases in costs because of the storage, moving and handling. And we know costs will ultimately reduce our profit. But there are risks of also having not enough inventory or having too little inventory. That might mean we might not have access to the materials when we need them, leading to production delays and the inability to meet our customer demand. We don't want a customer to come into our business and say, I would like to buy this, and we say, we can't, we don't have it. This will damage our business reputation. So this is why the management of materials, the management of our inputs is so important. And this is why often there is lots to do in materials management, and you might even have heard of inventory managers. That's because material management involves lots of things. It involves receiving materials, so receiving inputs and managing that, making sure that these materials or inputs are stored safely. We need to make sure that these are timely purchased. We need to do forecasting to ensure that we are identifying the ongoing materials requirements. What do we need? And they might be looking at cost savings, so reducing the holdings of surplus stock or inventory and controlling the release in the process. Because not only is it complicated making sure how much we have and managing all of this, remember, operation management can be very complex, even global, and we need to manage that as well. So hence we have a number of strategies. We're going to think about forecasting, master production scheduling, materials requirement planning, and finally something called inventory control or just-in-time management. When we think about forecasting, I want us to realize that the job of the materials manager is to make sure that we have the right materials, so the right inputs or outputs in the right quantity, so that in the right amount, at the right place, at the right time, at the right price, and from the right supplier or source. So it's really complicated, and hence forecasting is very important. What do we mean by forecasting? Forecasting is a materials planning tool that relies on data. We must use that word in our responses, and we use data from the past or the present, and we analyze the trends of this data in an attempt to determine future events. What do we mean by future events? How much is there going to be demand of these goods? When do I need it in this place to make the goods that I need? And effective forecasting enables the business to develop a production plan. A plan of how we're going to get the right materials in the right quantity, in the right place, at the right time, at the right price, and from the right source. And if we do this, this should minimize uncertainty, shocks, unforeseen costs, and lost sales, because we're going to predict our resource needs. Forecasting involves lots of aspects. It will involve thinking about what materials are needed, what quantity are needed, how much do we need, and what will be the transportation costs, and how will they be transported. We need to think about the timing of when they are needed, how much lead-in time do suppliers need, because we'll need to understand we're getting a lot of these from suppliers. And if we tell them we need an input to our process, they might need some time to actually do that themselves, particularly if it's a global supplier. And this will then allow us to work out when the production will commence. And we're going to have to look at the demand historically and start to think about what is going to happen in the future, and even some special demand fluctuations seasonally, for example. For example, we've used chocolate in a few videos. Two key spikes of chocolate demand will be Easter and Christmas, and the materials manager will need to manage that as well. We want to make sure we have enough of the chocolate, in that case, at those times. Once we have forecasted this, and I actually think of these strategies as often working together, we need to do more planning. And with this planning is a production plan and a materials plan. And this production plan is an outline of all the activities that need to be undertaken to combine our resources to create outputs. So we're coming up with our overall plan of how we're going to turn our inputs into outputs and making sure we have enough materials when and where we need them. This production plan includes two key aspects: a master production schedule and a materials requirement planning. These can be quite complicated in terms of which one to talk about, and we can sometimes get confused. I think it's important that we think about what's in the name. The most important word in the master production schedule is production. We are thinking about what is going to be produced. It is a plan, simplistically, of what the business is going to produce. So chocolate, I'm going to produce this amount of chocolate and this types of products. But it can be really complicated because we're also going to need to outline in this plan when it will be produced, where it will be produced, and the quantity in which it will be produced. So the master production schedule is thinking about the actual production, not the inputs into that production, but we're still going to be thinking about the quantity, how, when, and where this will occur, the labor force, so the people, the employees that we will need, and making sure that this will ensure delivery dates are met. And having an effective master production schedule ensure that goods will be produced and delivered on time. We will meet production schedules and we will satisfy customer demand. Now, this is the first step, because knowing what we're going to produce means we then have to manage all the inputs and all the processes to get that production done. And this is where materials requirement planning comes in. Materials requirement planning is when we use computers and we do computer-based inventory management systems to assist with the scheduling and placing of the orders for the materials required to make the production. So this is where we're going to have to think about all of the inputs and interactions of all the suppliers that we need to meet our production. So it's going to involve thinking about things like lead times, the exact number of raw materials needed. We're going to have to consider how much inventory we already have on hand. Do we need to order more? And think about the best way to do this purchasing procedure. Should we do big bulk purchasing to get a big order in? There are advantages and disadvantages of that. Might mean we're guaranteed of having it on site, but it might, and we don't have to pay expensive transportation costs as often, but there will be costs of having this in warehouses. So alternatively, do we do batch ordering, smaller orders but more regularly? And the advantages of doing production planning and scheduling, doing a master production schedule, master requirement planning is significant. It means that we should hopefully are able to accurately determine what quantities we need and the times we need them. This can avoid unnecessarily wastage, which will hopefully increase our efficiency and costs. It can mean if we have a plan, it can assist our new employees in knowing the production routines, and it can minimize disruption to production. Thus, disruptions are going to increase our cost, decrease our efficiency. We don't want there to be a time when our machines are idle. And this can increase our effectiveness, because if we do this, we should maintain a good reputation with our customers, thus increasing our reputation and not increase our efficiency, increase our effectiveness. Now, of course, there are downsides to this. We know that disadvantages when something sounds really good is it can be time consuming and it can be expensive or costly to track this. Also, we realize even with all the expenses and time for planning, sometimes the best plans are not realized in practice because it's beyond the manager's control. A natural disaster will destroy all of our best plans. COVID destroys all of our best plans. And it does reduce our flexibility, which planning might sometimes do that. So I want us to think of this as almost a three-step process. I almost put something prior to this. Businesses should do forecasting, looking at data from previous and current periods to work out future needs. Using this forecasting, they should do a production plan, which is an organization's overall production plan, thinking about what they're going to do, how much they need to produce. And within that first step, they should have, I'm going to write one step, or step one, they should do a master production schedule, which says the exact number of each product and when they will produce it. And then the second step is once they know what is going to be produced and where, they need to do materials requirement planning. And then we come to our fourth strategy called inventory control or just-in-time management. We've talked about inventory being important. We recognize that there are many costs with having too much inventory, and we want to minimize this as much as possible. And to go to the extreme example, we want to make sure that we just have just the right amount of inputs when required. Not too much, not enough. We can use computers to improve this. And if we do this, a business might adopt something called just-in-time system of inventory control. This is a very complicated but advanced approach where we ensure just the exact amount of materials or inputs arrive only as they are required. This often came from Japan, and a very famous business that does this exceptionally well is Toyota. They have adopted an overall philosophy of just-in-time or lean management, which we will learn soon, which means that they will hopefully only have just the amount of inputs for that day. They are making sure that they only have the inputs that they need when they need them. They only arrive as they are required. This involves a lot of a philosophy, a dedication, but the advantages are massive. It reduces our material handling and storage costs almost to nothing, and reduces the space requirements to hold this inventory of materials, reducing rent and premises costs. It means that there is very limited waste because we don't get things stolen or go out of date. And hence it's really, really effective. It will give you a competitive advantage if done well. And I really encourage you to look at a video on Toyota's factories or just-in-time and Toyota to see just how well they do this. Now, if they don't manage this appropriately, there are significant disadvantages to just-in-time. It means businesses are highly dependent on their suppliers because they are putting trust in them that their deliveries will arrive when they say they will. Because remember, they only have enough inputs for what they need. The materials inputs arrive only when they're required. So if they are delayed, it can completely shut down production. It can mean there is less time available for checking and inspecting the quality of your inputs because they are needed straight away. So you need high amount of trust and good relationships with your suppliers. Doing this regular batch ordering can mean there is higher costs for admin, and then you may lose bulk order discounts. But for now, I hope that this has helped you understand the real importance of materials management. Doing it effectively should mean fewer production delays, reduce costs of storage and handling, and improve customer satisfaction. So ultimately leading to greater efficiency and effectiveness. And I hope that you've understood how forecasting, master production schedules, materials requirement planning, and just-in-time management are able to use effective strategies to improve the efficiency and effectiveness in terms of materials management.